Okay, just to go on and move on to Ukraine. We now know that more than 200,000 people lack access to water across the Donetsk Oblast in the country's east. That's according to authorities and our humanitarian colleagues. More people could be cut off from water supplies as clashes continue in the area, potentially leaving millions of people without access to water. Attacks on healthcare are continuing. The World Health Organization said that since the 24th of February, there now have been 64 attacks on health facilities, healthcare workers, and ambulances. Health workers, healthcare facilities, and supplies must never be targeted. As we need to say that, it is sad that we need to say that over and over again. Any attacks on healthcare are violations of international humanitarian law. The International Organization for Migration is managing regional hotlines to help people move safely and have had more than 15,000 consultations in the last few weeks. They tell us that people are seeking information regarding human trafficking, as well as safe travels, how to seek asylum and obtain refugee status, and how to receive support from diplomatic institutions and other organizations. And a cash update for you, we're still at the 38% level of the $1.1 billion 2022 Ukrainian flash appeal. We thank the donors who've released their pledged money amounts and encourage others to convert pledges to cash as quickly as possible. And of course, the phone banks, as they say in telethons, remain open for people who have yet to pledge, and we would hope more pledges come through and more cash come through. And just now, the steering committee of the Global Crisis Response Group on Food, Energy, and Finance that the Secretary General announced earlier last week, is holding its first meeting. The aim of the steering committee is to coordinate the global response to the worldwide impacts of the crisis in Ukraine. In his remarks, the Secretary General is expected to note that many developing countries are already struggling to recover from the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and now they face skyrocketing food, fuel, and fertilizer bills. The Secretary General will stress that we need to bring developed and developing countries together to find global solutions, because this is a global crisis. The steering committee will be led by Amina Mohammed, our Deputy Secretary General, on behalf of the Secretary General, and will have 4 immediate areas of focus: coordination, action, data, and analysis, as well as partnerships. It will complement existing coordination and operational delivery mechanisms, lending its support to enhance and strengthen these arrangements and fill gaps as necessary. On food, for example, we will make a strong call on countries to prevent hoarding and speculative movements threatening supply and solidarity in time of crisis. All nations are urged to keep food markets open and to cease trade restrictions and export bans. The steering committee has about 31 members, including senior UN officials, representatives of Regional Development Bank, the International Chamber of Commerce, energy experts, and so on. And we'll release that list to you. The Security Council met this morning on cooperation with the League of Arab States. Addressing the Council, the Secretary General said the UN and the League of Arab States remain united in our pursuit of multilateral answers to the cascading challenges facing the Arab world and beyond. These efforts, he said, have added urgency as we face the profound global ramifications of the war in Ukraine. He noted that numerous countries, for example, import half of their wheat from Ukraine or Russia. That includes Egypt, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. The Secretary General discussed cooperation with the League in dealing with situations in Libya, Sudan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, Israel, and Palestine. The Council also heard from Ahmed Abu Ghait, the Secretary General of the League of Arab States. And I think that meeting is still underway. And on the heels of International Water Day, which was yesterday, our humanitarian colleagues in the Horn of Africa tell us that millions of men, women, and children face severe water shortages and are going hungry due to the devastating drought in the region. People in Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia have endured 3 consecutive poor rainy seasons. If the rains are scarce from March to May, this drought risks becoming one of the worst climate-induced emergencies in the last 40 years in the Horn of Africa. Water resources have dried up across the region, forcing people to walk long distances to find water for their families and their livestock. The crisis also resulted in displacement, conflict over scarce water resources, the increased risk of violence, and abuse against children and women. Food insecurity is at a record high. According to the latest estimate, between 13.1 and 14.1 million people in Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia are struggling to put food on the table every day. The prolonged drought will leave more than 5.7 million children acutely malnourished in these countries in 2022, 1.7 million of them severely acutely malnourished. Humanitarian partners are scaling up the response and have helped 1.6 million people in Somalia, more than 2.7 million in Ethiopia, and more than 800,000 people in Kenya. Aid agencies are appealing for $4.4 billion to help some 30 million people in the three countries, but funding is extremely low. We urge donors and international community to step up their help to fight the drought in the Horn of Africa. And as you may recall, in November of 2020, we released the UN Research Roadmap for COVID-19 recovery in collaboration with 38 research funding agencies around the world, led by the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. Today, new data published in Welcome Open Research shows that between April of 2020 and July 2021, more than $800 million has been invested in nearly 4,000 research projects aligned with the UN roadmap. The roadmap for COVID-19 recovery provides a framework for leveraging the power of science in support of better socioeconomic recovery, more equitable and resilient and sustainable future. It identifies 25 research priorities and key scientific strategies to support a recovery that benefits everyone, as well as action that researchers, research agencies, government, civil society organizations, and UN entities can take. And today is World Meteorological Day. In his video message that we sent to you earlier this morning, the Secretary General announced that the UN will spearhead the new action to ensure every person on Earth is protected by early warning systems within 5 years. The Secretary General asked the WMO to lead this efforts to represent an action plan at the next UN climate conference will take place at the end of this year in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Today, 1/3 of the world's people, mainly in least developed countries or small island developing states, still are not covered by early warning systems. The Secretary General said this is unacceptable, particularly when climate impacts are getting worse. Early action and early warning save lives. Any more details on WMO's website and, of course, in the statement we issued. Basta. Yes, Majid.
Thank you, Stéphane. On Ukraine, based on United Nations assessment, do you need a resolution from Security Council or General Assembly in order to deliver humanitarian aid? And do you think right now, what kind of decisions or attitude do you need from both bodies?
Well, we have been delivering humanitarian aid, right? We had a convoy go, I think, last Friday. We have humanitarian operations underway. I would just repeat what I said yesterday.
But you don't need it.
Well, we're delivering it, right? This is an organization made up of sovereign member states, legislative bodies, Security Council, General Assembly, Economic and Social Council. They will pass resolutions. It is their responsibility, their right, whatever you want to call it. We are not going to insert ourselves into which of the resolutions that's being discussed we want, right? This is the member states' prerogative, and not for the Secretary General to intervene. The only thing that truly helps us on this and every other issue is strong, united voices from the membership. Senor.
Steph, again on Afghanistan, what can the Secretary General do apart from statements, or what can the Security Council do? Any corps in the United Nations, and that this decision of the Taliban regime, can it affect to the fact that you are trying to be recognized by the United Nations as a member state?
Well,
Thank you.
I mean, I will leave it to journalists and analysts to discuss the international diplomatic repercussions of what's happened. Our focus is on helping the women and girls who showed up at school today and were not able to get in, crushing their dreams, right? Which will have an impact on the future of Afghanistan. No country can grow by excluding women and girls from education. I mean, the fact that we still have to say this in the 21st century, we are going to continue to engage with the de facto authorities, with the Taliban, to try to get this decision reversed. But let's be clear, whether it's in Afghanistan or anywhere else, the UN is not the authority, right? Our responsibility is continue to do whatever we can to advocate, to work on the ground, to help people. But there are authorities in Afghanistan, and they are responsible.
But there are means of pressure.
Sorry?
There are means of pressure on the regime by the UN different.
Well, I mean, member states will you know, every different entities, whether it's the Secretary General or member states or bodies within this organization, have different levers, right? We act on, in terms of the Secretariat and the agencies, we act on what we have in our toolbox. And, you know, I mean, this came as a shock to a lot of people, and including, from what Sam said, the Minister of Education. So our head of mission there, Deborah Lyons, is written to the Taliban leadership. We'll be meeting with them tomorrow to try to get some understanding and to try to, obviously, to get a reversal. I'll come back to Stefano. Yeah, Stefano Grafetti.
Yes, follow up on this. I think the Secretary General, the UN in general, has more tools and have words, and words have a moral statement. Once, you know, they told Stalin that the Pope had said something, and Stalin answered how many divisions, what army the Pope has. Well, he didn't realize that the Pope, when he speaks, can have a certain weight with words. So what is the Secretary General, what words is going to use against the Taliban? You just read.
I just read out the Secretary General's words. You just heard from Sam. You just heard from me. I mean, these are the words that we are using. We are not only using words, as I said, we are engaging. We will engage with the Taliban authorities to try to get some clarification about why this surprise decision was taken, to try to get some reversal of this. And when you talk about the UN, Stefano, what UN are you talking about? There are different parts of the UN. There's the Secretary General, there's the Security Council, there's the General Assembly. There are all sorts of entities in the UN. I think everyone is mobilized to support the inherent right of women and girls to get education, to get the same education that boys may be afforded. And everyone will work towards that same goal. I have no doubt. Everyone has different tools, and everyone may go at it different ways. But I think we all have to be united in this very goal.
Very quick follow-up. Do you think it's correct to say that the Secretary General of the United Nations, whoever it is, represent the moral conscience of the world when it speaks?
Do you have any issue with the words the Secretary General just used? Do you think they were weak?
I think they can be stronger and can be, yes, because like you just said, sometimes when you answer, I understand that you interpreted his thinking, you say, you know, this is an organization, member states, they decide, we can only, it looks like that you want to give us the impression that the Secretary General can just arrive to a point. We think they can be more assertive.
I mean, listen, I'm going to read them again in case you weren't listening. okay? The Secretary General says that denial of education not only violates the equal rights of women and girls to education, it also jeopardizes the country's future in the views of tremendous contributions made by Afghan women and girls. He urges the Taliban de facto authorities to open schools for all students without any further delay. Those are his words, right? Those are his words. And those words will be conveyed directly also to the Taliban authorities tomorrow by Deborah Lyons.
I'm not questioning the Secretary General
You can
statement.
question whatever you want.
But let me be more blunt in my question. What kind of credibility is expected from Taliban? Since day one that they came back to power, and they had the women and girls at their crosshair. They say, oh, we're going to apply Sharia.
Fethi, do I look that Taliban spokesman to
No,
you?
I don't.
No, I mean, you're asking me questions.
But I mean the process.
You're engaged in like in a coffee chat conversation.
No, I'm
I
not.
will let you. That's an analysis question. You answer that question. I can only answer the question to what we are doing, to what we are saying. What impact it will have beyond the immediate heartbreaking impact on women and girls who are trying to get into school today, I will leave that to you. Linda, I'm going to move on for a second.
I'm sorry,
no, Fethi, I'm going to move on.
Okay.
Linda, please.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Steph. My question involves the crisis, particularly in poor countries, regarding food. And the Secretary General, as you said earlier, is very concerned about it and is trying to work on that situation. I was just wondering if you know if the Secretary General thinks that perhaps food from Russia, which is obviously under sanctions, should be allowed to be sold to these poor countries to help alleviate, particularly the ones that already, that already buy it from Russia.
I don't know the details where the food from Russia is actually under sanction. What I do know is that the ongoing fighting, the ongoing access issues in the Sea of Azov, in the Black Sea, are making it very difficult, if not impossible, for grains from the breadbasket of the world, from Ukraine and from Russia, to get out through that way. And for Ukraine, the percentage I saw were extremely high of the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea being used as air export routes for grain. The problem is that this conflict, beyond the horrors it is raining down on the people in Ukraine, it is having a potentially devastating impact on others, not only in terms of access to food, but also in terms of political stability. And this is exactly the crux of the issue the Secretary General and the Steering Group are discussing today, to try to ensure that member states, to give advice to member states to ensure that they do not put in place policies that will make the matters worse, like hoarding, like closing off of exports, right? We kind of saw it with COVID, where this shutting down, this hoarding of medical supplies, it made things worse, right? There remains a lot of food on the open market, and we need to make sure that people who need it can access it. Yes, Dulcie.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to that convoy in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. It went into Sumy. Mm-hmm. Was it successful, or is it still happening? Or
No, it was
just 1 day.
Yeah, it went in and out. And we put out a press release on Friday. But we're working on more. There are no other UN convoys. There were no today, and we'll see what the next days bring.
So possibly one into Mariupol, or
I mean, let me put it this way: we know where the needs are. We're trying to get to where it's needed. Obviously, the biggest aspect is the continuing fighting.
And just one other question on that. So this deconfliction program. Is the UN? It's the UNDP. I think you said that's working with. No. So
it's our humanitarian colleagues.
Okay.
And our colleagues in the Department of Safety and Security.
Okay. And so are they still working with the Russian defense minister on this?
They're in contact with the Ministry of Defense in Russia. They're in contact with the appropriate authorities in Ukraine. Again, this is these efforts are not a political effort. It's about ensuring the safety of the delivery of humanitarian goods and personnel. We have similar systems in Geneva, which works on the Syria context, and we have a similar setup in dealing with the Yemen context.
So Russia has been cooperative on this particular issue of delivering humanitarian aid in a specific time and place.
Let me put it this way. They have been cooperative in the sense that they have invited, and we have UN personnel in Moscow who work with the Ministry of Defense. Like all of these deconfliction, it is not about guarantees. It's about ensuring that all the warring parties know where we want to go and creating a situation where we feel it's safe that we can go there. Majid.
Thank you, Stéphane. On the talks about JCPOA, the Iran nuclear program, yesterday the State Department Press Secretary Ned Price said an agreement of this sort is neither imminent nor is it certain. Any reaction?
You know, we're watching what's going on with the JCPOA. As you know, we're not a party to it. We have been saying for quite some time, since this was signed and after it was partly undone, that we believe this is a very important agreement, and we hope the parties will come to some agreement on it. Okay. Thank you. Now we'll leave it to Paul. Oh. Okay, I'm going to go to Gregory, and then Maggie, if that's you, I'll come back to you in a second.
It's Chris with CBC. Actually.
Oh, Chris, sorry. Chris, stand by 2 seconds. I'm going to go Gregory, and then I'll come to you.
Stéphane, thank you very much. Russian ambassador to Poland said that authorities of Poland has blocked the bank accounts of Russian embassy, et cetera. It's clear violation of Vienna Convention. How can you assess that?
Let me take a look. I mean, I don't know the particular case. As we've always said, we believe strongly in defending the Vienna Convention and the work of diplomats, but I have to look into that particular case. Chris, please.
Steph, just ahead of the NATO summit, there's some predictions that they might call for a NATO peacekeeping force into Ukraine, and others have said that perhaps a UN peacekeeping force would be a much safer option. I don't know if you've already spoken to this, but what's the Secretary General's reaction?
I think the Secretary General. Sure. I mean, the Secretary General spoke about this at the beginning of this crisis. What is clear is that the way for any peacekeeping mission to get created is for a Security Council mandate to get approved by the Security Council. And obviously, what is also very important for any UN peacekeeping mission is that there is a peace to keep. Paulina, I will turn it to you to bring the temperature down.